Yep.
So I'll just wait until you answer and connect me back in or whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, definitely.
Okay. Alrighty, thanks.
All right, you're welcome. And so what I'd probably recommend is just keep your phone on mute right now and wait for the meeting to start.
Okay, will do.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Thomas.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay.
Or, well, not bye, but...
Got it.
Yeah.
Mute.
All right.
Okay.
I talked to Bill Phil. Oh, and you know, this would just be a substitute. Carol was voting. No, this one too. Yeah, this one.
All right, you ready? I see it. All right. Hey.
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, that's right.
What'd she say?
Exactly. You stole my line.
All right, be nice to me. Can you hear us, Susan?
I can certainly hear everything.
Oh my God.
Just a little fun.
Exactly.
Just a little fun.
I'm going back to mute for a little while, but I can
All
still
right.
hear.
Okay.
Oh, I got it. Just need a couple members.
Yeah. We only have a couple members.
That's right. Who are we missing? Okay.
Bob and Susan, because they're not.
And then is it... Okay. All right. Well, good evening. I will call the special meeting for the for the April 21st, 2015 City Council meeting. Would you all please rise? And Joanne Paquette, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, and we have, welcome everybody. We do have, it looks like we've only got 5 members of the council here. Through the modern miracle of science, we actually have all 7 present. Councilmember Honda, can you hear us? Councilmember Honda?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
All right. So she is appearing telephonically. Susan, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. I'm in Alexandria, Virginia.
Very good. Okay, now, and then I believe in the other microphone, we have Councilmember Bob Selski. Bob, can you hear me?
I can indeed, Mayor Farrell.
And where are you?
I am in North Carolina, and glad I can participate this way.
Very good. All right, well, thank you. Just wanted to make sure it was clear. And we are televising this meeting to make sure that the folks out in the community can see this exciting presentation. Right now, we're here for the special meeting for the Performing Arts and Conference Center presentation. First, let's hear from Will Appleton, our staff lead for the Performing Arts and Conference Center. Sir?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Will Appleton. I'm the project director for the PACC project. I'm really pleased to be here tonight with some key members of the Performing Arts and Conference Center team present as well, and I just wanted to introduce them. We have Wendy Pouts with L&M. She's the lead architect on this project. PJ Santos with Lorax Partners, who's taking up the project management and construction management piece of this project. And another key member who's been present for some time but has really made her presence felt with this project is Teresa Yvonne, who's the PACC director, and she's been just a real pleasure to work with, a great addition to staff. Also, Ade Arwula is here tonight to do a bit of a touch on the budget and financing piece of this project towards the end. With that, the purpose of the presentation tonight is to really bring you up to speed on the look and the feel and the functionality of the PACC. We are currently in a phase of designing and putting together the construction documents for this project. So we are really running towards this finish line of breaking ground in September of 2015, and we remain on track with that time frame. With that, Wendy Pouts will be providing a brief presentation on kind of the look and feel again of the PACC. And so I will go ahead and turn it over to her for the balance of the presentation.
All right. Welcome, Wendy.
first. There we go. Thank you for having us back again this evening to give you an update on the status of the project. As we've said all along, we've been really delighted and honored to be part of this team to help craft the Performing Arts and Conference Center as a really vital part of the town center development here in Federal Way. Probably there's some information that you've seen before, but I'd like to go through that just so that we can all remind ourselves about what the basic design components of the facility are. We've always been intent on creating an experience that's a combination of not just the building, but also a really wonderful plaza, as well as a really beautifully crafted landscape and site design. And we really see that as part of carrying the idea of the town square park across 316th and bringing it up onto this site. On the screen, you'll see a site plan which indicates our current design for the entire site, which includes a large number of parking stalls, entrance into the facility via a treed alleyway that brings you into not just the main entry to the lobby, but also the stage entry and the administrative office entry, as well as a pathway into that really important component of loading for the facility. So that's where we are in our thinking about the site design today. Next, I want to just talk a little bit about the plan and echo a little bit of what Will said. It's been really terrific to have Teresa involved in the project over the course of the last month. We always like to work with executive directors to fine, hone, and tune the plan. And so we think we're now at a point with this plan where we can achieve all the multifunctionality that we've been talking about relative to the venues themselves. And that the back of house spaces, again, are tuned to support that activity. So in this plan, you'll note in the red, of course, the auditorium and the stage, which is the focus of the overall building. But we have also been working very diligently to craft a lobby and meeting rooms that can become very functional and flexible spaces that can make this facility work in a conference or meeting mode as well. Dark gray are all the back of house spaces. So in this plan, particularly on the right-hand side, are spaces that are primarily in support of the performing arts component. As I described, 2 loading bays here, one specifically for the stage that allows one to move goods directly from the truck into the stage, and another loading bay that can be used to support the kitchen and the other back of house function, which is there to support the event and meeting use in those front of house lobby and meeting room spaces. At the balcony level, the spaces that you see colored are what are actually floor planned at this level, so a smaller area than the plan below. And in the same color range, the red is the balcony seating for the auditorium. The light gray are the restrooms. Those occur on both levels to support the lobbies and the auditorium use. And a component that we've talked about quite a bit over the course of this project, the patron lounge, which is again another really flexible space that can be served for patron events, could be used as an expansion of the balcony lobby, and could also be used as specific meeting space. So 2 really important aspects of this project are the conferencing functionality and the auditorium functionality. So I'm going to spend a few moments to just touch on those again. As we've been looking at the facility, we've designed it so that it can accommodate banqueting, and we've really looked at that in a pretty wide range of participant sizes. And we've also looked at what I kind of describe as a day in the life. So conferences that are in the 150 participant capacity, as well as large conferences, which might be up to 300 150 participants. The following drawings are potential configurations of the lobby and the meeting room space to accommodate banqueting. And there's a wide variety of ways that this space could be set up. This ability is created by operable partitions in this location here and here. So when one moves those out into these storage closets, the partitions are invisible. They open up this entire space so that it could be set up in a variety of ways. And these are two of the larger capacity setups that we've looked at. There are also medium-sized capacities utilizing just the lobby or the lobby and components or parts of the meeting rooms, as well as setups that use just the meeting rooms. So this moves us into the conference capacity and the day in the life of a 150-person conference. And this is just meant to illustrate how the spaces might work over time in a day, starting with plenary sessions in the lobby or a general open meeting at the beginning of a conference, moving into the meeting rooms for breakout spaces, reconvening in the lobby for a banquet or a food event. In the scenario of a larger conference, the auditorium might come into play as a space that would serve for that general session, an opening meeting, or potentially a closing meeting. The meeting rooms themselves, as well as the auditorium, could then serve for breakout function. And then again, reconvening for a banquet event in the lobby and combined meeting spaces. We have thought about the auditorium design in the same way in terms of really creating a multifunctional and flexible venue. So we have all the components that you see in this diagram that allows this performing arts space to move from being a primarily music venue to one that might accommodate dance and musical theater, to one that might be more focused on drama or supporting community lectures or that conference functionality that I just described. So without going into all of the details, you can see that there is a fly loft that's part of this component that allows us to move sets up and down from the stage, a proscenium opening, an orchestra pit, all the acoustical elements within the space to provide the correct acoustical environment for all of the modes that I described. And then a design of the seating chamber itself, as we've described over time, to be an intimate environment if there is an audience of 350. That's in the front of the orchestra, 500, which is the full capacity for the orchestra level, and then another 200 at the balcony, resulting in 700 seats throughout both of those levels in the auditorium. So I wanted to just show a couple of diagrams of what that looks like within the stage area when those different functions occur within the space. So I described the seating chamber, the stage, the fly loft, and the orchestra pit. When the facility is in music mode or symphonic mode, there's an orchestra shell, so those are the walls here as well as the ceiling that are deployed. The intention is that those would be in the same color of wood as within the auditorium. This diagram doesn't exactly show them that way, but the intention is that they would be the same color so that there is a continuity of experience from the seating area all the way into the back of the symphony. So you feel like you're sitting in the same room with the performers. In this scenario, the orchestra pit cover might be at stage level, and the symphony orchestra might actually be out into the room, moving past the proscenium opening. And On the lower left-hand corner, that is a photograph of McIntyre Hall. I think a number of you are familiar with that facility, and that's an illustration that shows that orchestra shell in situ, the symphony out onto the orchestra pit and actually moving into the audience chamber of the auditorium. In dance or musical theater, so these are events that might have musicians in the orchestra pit to support the performance on stage. So in that case, that orchestra pit cover actually moves down to its lowest level within the room. They are there to support the action that then occurs on the remainder of the stage. And there's a really careful design of the aperture of the orchestra pit, the reflective devices above that to ensure that the sound from the orchestra pit is moving out and filling up the full audience chamber and volume. And then lastly, in a mode where the orchestra pit is not in use for musicians, there is the opportunity to move that orchestra pit cover so that it is at the same level as the orchestra level seating, and to add orchestra level seating in this location. The action then occurs on the stage from the proscenium back to the back of the stage level. So those are 3 illustrations of the many ways in which the auditorium could be configured to support a wide variety of activity. As Will mentioned, we're here to give also a status on where we are relative to the material palette of the building. So in previous discussions, we've talked about the overall massing of the building and the idea about the massing of the building. It's really a composition of landscaping, hardscaping, plaza areas, and thinking about the south edge of the building as a lantern within the city. And then complementing that big move is a pattern of metal paneling that moves all the way up to the top of the flyloft. And the idea there is to take advantage of texture, profiling, and different colors to animate those facades. And then we've also talked about the idea of the auditorium being predominantly a really warm environment, a wood environment, but as you come into that space, you actually move into it through some really wonderful, rich color. And we think there's a really interesting opportunity to bring that really rich color out into the lobby as part of the lobby experience as well. So on the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see kind of a composite of all of the materials and colors that we're currently proposing. Those are also on the table in front of the audience seating here. And we encourage everyone to come and take a look at that, and be happy to answer questions about that after the presentation. So this is a new rendering or a new view of this facility. And we've done this because since we presented the material palette in the last meeting, we've had lots of feedback and input on the material. So we wanted to update that render. And that feedback really was to create a palette that has a lot of warmth and a lot of richness in it. So I think that you'll note that we've changed a lot of the colors to have those be much warmer and much richer. As I described, the really key iconic element of this facility is transparency and lots of glass on the south edge, such that the building is a really, really wonderful lantern that you can see from the city. And that, in combination with the landscaping and the plaza, makes a really wonderful interior and exterior environment and experience. In the bottom of this slide, there are photographs of materials. These are the profiles or the textures that are being proposed for the metal paneling. They are not the colors. They're all the same color. We heard the same comment about the metal panel colors. So the current proposed metal panel colors are right here. The idea is that the lightest of those colors is at the top of the lobby space. The medium color is lower along the kind of edge of the walkway coming into the building, and then that color gets deeper as it moves up into the fly loft. And we went back and kind of massaged these colors to be the warmest colors in the palette of metallic metal paint colors that are available to us. I think another thing to remember is that because the building is really glassy, all of the interior finishes become a part of your experience of the venue. And so you can see through the glazing, the kind of outer shell of the auditorium as it comes and lands in the lobby. So the proposal there is to take that really rich burgundy color that you experience within the auditorium, bring that out into the lobby as a really important component of the overall color and material palette of the lobby spaces. And then a view inside the auditorium. So this is taken as if you are in about the third row of the balcony seating. You can see the balcony walls that come around all three sides and engage this wood screen. So we've talked about this idea of a wood screen. You walk into the auditorium between or behind this wood screen. In that area, you're experiencing this really rich burgundy color. That burgundy color continues up into the ceiling, and you might be able to see that in the render right in this location, and completes itself down behind the wood wall on the other side. We heard feedback about looking at kind of taking the color or the stain of the wood and making that a little darker and a little more rich, and we've done that as well. And maybe a note of caution, the materials in the slides, we photographed them to as true of rendition as possible, but they are not always as accurate as the actual samples themselves, and I kind of say that just because I look at the wood sample here and it feels a little bit lighter than the sample that we have brought with us. So this render is showing the room in music mode, and in that mode you can see the orchestra shell, both the walls and the ceiling, really coming in and completing that whole idea of the wood screen that's enveloping the audience seating within the main auditorium. So that when you're in the room, in kind of a music presentation, you really do feel like you're in the same room as the musicians. Our proposal for the main stage drape, so this would be in the mode of drama or musical theater, lecture. The orchestra shell and the ceiling are not in place, so when you come into the room, you would actually experience the drape across the proscenium opening, and the proposal there is to get a really nice, rich, warm, kind of yellowy, woodish color, so that it does a very similar thing in terms of completing the sense of the experience of that wood wall at the proscenium opening when there is the main drape in place. And then finally, there's a little bit of carpeting that's at the floor. In general, we like to look at the floor finishes being dark. We don't want the floor to be present when you're in performance mode. There's a lot of lighting that occurs there to highlight the performers, and we want the focus to be on the performers. So our general approach to floors in the auditorium is to keep them kind of neutral and dark. There are also areas like underneath all of the seats that would be painted or sealed concrete, and so the intention there would be also to have those be a little darker so they're not quite present. And then finally, the last piece, and again, the actual samples are a little bit clearer, are the seats themselves. So the proposal is wood-backed seats with wood aisle posts, and we're looking at a fabric that is, I'm describing it as mushroomy sagey. It's a really, and it's a velour, so it has a really nice sheen to it. It's really warm, and it works really well as a complement to that burgundy wall color. And also as a color that's just a little bit different than the wood color, so that the seats differentiate themselves. And a proposal is to have the wood on the seats be a little bit darker, and that's the sample in this location. So a little bit darker, so that again they differentiate themselves from all of the really wonderful rich wood that's on the walls. One other feature to notice, and you might see this in the rendering, is that wood wall changes from opaque to transparent as it moves from the stage to the back of the room. So at the very front of the room, the wood panels are all solid, 100% solid. As the panels move back in the room, they actually get more open. And this is all for acoustical purposes. So we are looking for opaque walls right at the proscenium opening in this location so that we're getting great sound reflections from the stage. But as we move back into this area of the auditorium, we actually want the sound to go through the screen wall, and that sound to feel that whole volume. So it's going all the way back to the red walls, and it's kind of seeing the red walls as the full volume of the space. So in addition to being a really lovely element of creating the experience, it's also vital to crafting the acoustical environment. And one final feature, in this space there will be variable acoustics. So those are drapes along the red wall, and they will be the same color as the red wall. This is a component of being able to tune the room. So when we're in lecture mode, or we want to dampen the sound in the room, those drapes will be out in the space up against the red wall. When we're in symphonic mode, those will all be hidden back in pockets. And I think that brings us back around to the first exterior rendering, and kind of concludes our status of where we are with the project right now.
All right, Council, do we have any questions? Councilmember Maloney?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say I appreciate the changes that you've made, and I think it looks really nice, and so thank you very much.
Council, any other, Deputy Mayor Burbidge?
Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the contrast and the rich colors that you're proposing here. And there's some upholstery on the seats also. Now, is that in the shades of gray that you had been suggesting?
The seat fabric is kind of a greenish, sage-ish.
Well, that's the mauve.
That's my mushroom sage.
That was the mushroomy
right.
sage. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. And in addition, you were talking about the wall panels being more solid toward the front.
Correct.
And you were implying that as you move back, is there more of the screen effect then?
That's correct. The maximum transparency is about 50%. So when we're at the back of the wall, so not as they come around the back of the room, at that point the panels are about 50% transparent.
Okay.
At the front of the room they're 100% solid.
Okay.
And then on the walls behind the seats, at the very rear of the window, very rear of the seating area, we go back to 100% wood paneling, but in that scenario the paneling is actually toothed, so it's not flat, it's got a little bit of profile. Another acoustical measure to make sure that sound coming from the stage and hitting the back wall gets dispersed laterally versus going straight back to the stage.
Mm-hmm. Which also then adds some visual texture.
Exactly.
Thank you.
All right, Council? Thank you very much. What are the next steps?
Shall I ask Will to help out with that question?
Will, please.
Absolutely. So the next steps, as I pointed out, we're currently in the process of creating the construction drawings. We will be assembling the bid documents following that, and then we will be bringing, just prior to completing the bid documents, we'll actually be coming before council for authorization to bid. Then we'll be completing the bid documents, and then we'll be putting that out to bid in an August timeframe, and then moving forward with construction, breaking ground in a September timeframe. So really, this project at this point right now, we are in a bit of a sprint towards the finish line, so that's kind of where we're at, and that's the next steps. Everything in place to be successful.
Very good. Thank you. Wendy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job. And PJ, good work as well. At this stage, I wanted to call Brian Wilson, my chief of staff, and Adea Rawalo, our finance director, but we'll have them come up and talk about the new market tax credit summary for the financing of the PAC, and also just a general outline of where we're at with the finances. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor Farrell, council, and citizens. I'm here. Our Economic Development Director, Tim Johnson, is actually in Los Angeles the last 2 days, attending the Clearinghouse CDE, which is one of the largest community development entities that is responsible for distributing new market tax credits. And our own Tim Johnson serves on the board of that entity. So at this conference, there are almost every CEO of banks and financial institutions who are interested in this upcoming allocation of new market tax credits, which is scheduled for mid-June. So Tim is representing us and our project well over the last 2 days. Just as a summary, we have 9 applications out for new market tax credits funding. We anticipate, again, having these a decision to these development entities or allocations for funding by mid-June. We are working closely on the operational pro forma and incorporating specific programmatic elements into our pro forma to ensure and enhance the marketability of our project for new, new market tax credit funding. I'll echo what Will said, is that we're really pleased to have our PAC Director, Teresa Yvonne, as part of our team in this particular area as well. So some areas that we are incorporating into our pro forma to enhance the marketability of our project for new market tax credits is an economic development theme and how the PAC leveraging economic development activity serves as a catalyst for the city and for the area. We're looking at assessing direct job generation as a result of the PAC, how the performing arts and events serve the community at large, how we support local arts groups and the low-income community within Federal Way and the surrounding area. We're looking at culinary arts and education and how that can benefit not only provide a tremendous service at the facility itself, but how does that enhance our community. And we're also, as always, focused on the sustainability of an operational pro forma in terms of once the facility opens, that will be sustainable moving forward. Excuse me. We have discussions with and have identified a new market tax credit consultant that will assist us in the marketing of our project and the securing of those new market tax credits. And we are in ongoing discussions with him and his company as we move forward. We have also, with new market tax credits and the process, it is a very complicated and very specialized area, and we have also identified some of the best legal talent that can assist us in that effort, in addition to our own city attorney, Amy Jo Pearsall, who is quickly becoming an expert in this area as well.
I should say, when I was, just to interrupt, when I was sitting down speaking with the Speaker of the House earlier this session, I think probably about January or February, he asked me specifically who the attorney was, and I provided that information. He goes, "That is the best guy. That's who we use for he uses for his projects." So, you know, we've got the very best legal representation. And
So
Councilmember
did
Duclos?
the Multi-Service Center also used him and his firm because they really are experts on both new market and low-income housing tax credits.
Right. He really put me through it. He asked me a number of things about exactly who these folks were, because when I was talking to him about funding for the PAC, he wanted to make sure that we were on track, because our ask right now is $2 million from the state. And so they want to make sure that we're on track. And go ahead, Brian.
And lastly, in anticipation of the allocations to these CDEs by the federal government in mid-June, there are two significant conferences that are going to occur in the next month. And excuse me, these are coordinated by some of the specific accounting firms that have expertise in new market tax credits. There's one in Miami and there's one in Washington, D.C. And we are planning to have representation at those conferences to, again, market our property for the project for the allocation of new market tax credits.
All right. All right.
Questions?
Thank you. Council, any questions?
I have a question.
All right. Councilmember Honda?
Thanks very much for the presentation. The funding to hire the experts on the new market tax credits is coming from where?
That is part of the budget that's identified that we have some funding currently, but in terms of allocations, a lot of the funding and payments for these types of services are arranged on the back end. If we are successful in obtaining new market tax credits, those types of fees and services are taken care of at closing, and generally that's the manner in which that's addressed.
And by the back end, Councilmember Honda, by the back end, he means that that it's a percentage of whatever they bring in. So
we don't know how much then it will cost at this point.
Well, the money comes from the new market tax credit allocations. So
I understand that,
yeah.
but so I understand that it'll come out of that funding, but we don't know the total of the cost for these experts.
Their proposal right now, we're negotiating what that percentage is. We're in the process of negotiating what that percentage is. They've made a proposal. We've made a counter proposal. We've yet to receive we've yet to come to terms on what that percentage is. We know what the market is. So we know what the market is, but there's a little bit of negotiation. The people that we're dealing with, ECB,
yes,
out of San Francisco, they were the individuals that were some of the individuals that we met with in San Diego. We're talking with another consultant, and we were not able to come to terms with that first individual who came to City Hall. So now we're working with ECB, and we're going back and forth. Right now we're working with them in negotiations, and ultimately we've yet to hear. They made an offer, I made a counter, and we're negotiating.
Okay, thank you.
I should mention too that part of the discussions with our consultant in this area is how we put together our pro forma and the marketing information that we have for the new market tax credit. So that's a key piece, and we want to make sure that whatever is marketed out to these CDEs about the program, that we can live up to and meet those expectations that are identified in the plan.
Yeah, all right, I think I've said enough. All right. Yeah, Councilmember Honda, did you have any other questions on that piece?
No, that answers it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to Finance Director Ade Arurlo for our next part.
All right, please proceed.
Good evening, Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor, Council. I want to take you a little back to what we gave to the council just about a year ago. In May of 2014, this is part of the presentation that I made to the council, showing the makeup of the proposed funding for the program, for the project, estimating about $32 million, and saying that we have about $144,000 on hand. We'll be able to generate about $10 million from ourselves, and we'll be able to raise maybe $3 million from CDBG loan for culture, state capital funding, with a total of about $9 million in addition to the $10 million that we have. And we also share with you at that meeting of May 8th that 12.78 will be considered a bridge funding. What does that 12.78 represent? Is we share with you that we need to have a temporary financing, which is considered bridge, that is bridging the funding for the project before the final funding gets in. Also, the second part that we discussed was the permanent financing. We also share with you the likelihood of the funding of all the money that we proposed. The naming right, that there's a likelihood we'll be able to raise between 2.2 million to 3.5. The fundraising campaign between 0.75 million to 1 million, and grants between 1 million and 1.5. A new market between 0 and 7.2. If we were to get 7.2 in new market, we would not need any additional permanent financing. If we do not, depending on how much, we may need some funding, and that is where the 8.7 or the 9 million comes from. Further, I remember on that May 8th, I shared with the council that if we didn't have all of that money, we have the capacity, the capability to be able to do about $9 million in bond, and gave you some information on if we do it for 20 years, how much it will be. If we do it for 10 years, how much it will be. And it was with that information that the council passed resolution number 14-667 that allow us to do the interfund loan, which was intended to be the bridge loan before all the money came in. It was with the understanding that we will now have all the funding before we start construction. That is why the interfund loan was in there. The council approved the resolution that if we need it, we could use the up to 13 million for about 3 years at 1%, and that 3 years kicks in with the first draw. We haven't taken any draw. So also the council passed resolution 14669, which was the redevelopment zone, where we reclassify part of that area as a economically depressed zone. So those are part of the decisions that the council have made in order to get us to where we are. Update on some of this funding. We already have the 144,000. We have the $10 million in the bank as of now. The CDBG loan, we're putting in the application by June, which is when it is due. We already have the allocation for that. It's just a matter of applying for the grant for that $30 million. The foreclosure grant, also, we will know the status of that in the next few months, which I think it looks very good. It will be for construction. The state capital funding, which is another part of the expected funding for the project, which will be used for construction, we will also know that It is currently in the proposed state budget, so we will know more about that. We plan to raise about $1 million from the hotel pad. We are in negotiation in terms of the sale for the pad, so that is going. For the lift, we plan to have about 501,000, about $500,000. In 2015, we know we will have about 0.3 million of that. For culture, 150,000. We already have 120 of that. The building arts grant for 325,000. We already have 98,000 of that. So with the bridge loan, the bridge or the amount to be funded of 12.78 million. So the breakdown of that 12.78 million, they say, well, we think the naming right will range from that, from 2.2 million to 3.5. We're still working on it. The fundraising campaign to range from 7.75 million to 0.1 million. I mean, I think the community have done really, really well with the Federal Way Coalition for the Performing Arts. I think they've raised more than 60% of that already, which I think is really very impressive. The grant between 1 million and 1.5, again, that one we're also working on. The new market, as Will and Chief of Staff mentioned, this time last year, when I came before you, we had one application. I think part of the things that maybe we haven't shared with you fully is what we've done this year that makes us different from what we've done last year. We've gone 360 circle on what we did last year. Like I said, one application last year. This year we have 9. The mayor has gone to California. We have somebody like Tim who is also in California now. We are actually speaking with DCDE constantly. What are you looking for? What do you need in your for the project to be okay? So we've gone further than we've ever done before. Is this thing a guarantee? No, but we've done a lot of things to make sure we succeed. So way more than we did last year. I think like Chief of Staff mentioned, I think we'll be going to Florida next month. We'll be going to DC just to make sure we have our project in front of the CDEs to make our project more, appealing. We are working with our local entities, again, to make it more appealing. So we've done more to make sure this new market will go than we've ever done before. So we are working on it, and we hope to have more information sometimes in June. Again, as during the May presentation, I also share with you, depending on what happens with new market, there's also potential bonding for about 9 million. And that is where the conversation of 604, how much it will be, 1%, 20 years, 10%, 10 years, that is when we had that conversation. Now, to share with you, great. Out of all this money, what have you done with it? Where are you? Well, we got the 5.4 million from the state. We purchased the land. So we've spent that. Since the inception, we spent out of $6.6 million that is budgeted for design. We've spent about 2.7 in the design. So we're waiting on the construction. We have 25.7 budgeted for construction. Of course, we haven't started that. So that is what we're waiting for. We've spent a miscellaneous about 0.5 million. We budgeted 0.5 for that. We spent about that. What exactly is that miscellaneous? That is some of the legal fees, some of the ground preparation. When we brought down the building that was on the site, when we brought it down, cleared that up. So if I were to take the 5.4 for land, that is how we arrive at the amount that a lot of people refer to, the 32.75 million, 32.8 million. That is how we arrive at that. So as of now, we still have adequate cash to finish the design, to start the construction before we actually tap into the interfund loan. Yes, based on what I analyzed earlier, most of this money are grants. What that means is they will be reimbursable expenses. That also means we have to spend it first before we will get them. That is the essence of the interfund loan, to make sure that we have money to be able to spend, then we can get the reimbursement from the grantor.
Dan, which funds are those reimbursable loans or grants?
We have, for culture, it will be reimbursable expense. We'll have to spend it first.
That's that $2 million.
Correct.
Okay.
Before we can get it. So the state capital also, I have the feeling we'll have to spend it before we get reimbursement for it.
That's the other $2 million.
Correct.
If it stays in the House capital budget.
Yes.
Or once the House and the Senate reconcile, the $2 million's still there, then we have to spend it, assuming the governor signs it, and we're good there. And we've gotten some assurances from our lobbyists that the Senate will respect the House allocation of the $2 million. So if it's sitting there, then we have to spend it and then get reimbursed.
Correct.
Okay.
To give you a little bit of additional background on the condition of the city, for 2015, we have the councilmanic capacity for the city, that is 92.63 million. That is, the council can borrow just by the action of the council up to 92.63 million. Then also the council can borrow additional 83.19 million with the vote of the citizens, giving you the capacity of about $175 million. Also, to take you down a little bit of memory lane, in 2004, the city was paying a little bit over $3 million in principal and about $1.8 million in interest. That amounted to 12% of the general government expense. When you go to the bank to get either car loan or mortgage loan, what the bank would do is to see, okay, how much income are you bringing in? What is the percentage of your new loan? What your debt payment will be of your income? It is the same thing here. What is the percentage of your debt of your total spending as a government? So in 2004, our percentage was 12%. In 2005, it was 11.5%. In 2014, it was 4.1. So what that means is only about 4% of our general government was spent on debt, which in 2004, 12% of our general government money was spent on debt. Again, it's the same thing if you were comparing that to your own personal finances at home. How much of your income are you spending on car loan? How much of your income are you spending on mortgage? When we did the bond last, this is way better than the United States government. The city's rating was AAA. That was when we went out on our loan. Yes, on our own. If you look at SCORE, some people may look at the rating for SCORE or for the communication. That was when they put us together with other cities, which means if you were applying for a loan with somebody else, the economic condition of that person will affect your rating. The true economic condition or evaluation of you is when they look at you alone. So this AAA by Moody is for the city of Federal Way alone, without considering city of Auburn, city of Kent, or anybody else. If you look at the rating, when we did the score, it was combined with those other entities. So we were not being evaluated by ourselves. In my own conclusion, the grants are reimbursement only, so we need to keep that in mind. We will not have all the funding before we break ground, because we will have to spend it before we get them. We will know more about our new market tax credit by June. That is when the Treasury is supposed to make the announcement. We will know more about Section 108 towards the end of the year. We will put in the application in June. My understanding is by towards the end, either October, November, we will know more. We will have the final word on Section 108. If we were to bond, again, which we presented to the council, with the council full understanding that, we may have to bond between 0 and 9, depending on how much of the new market, how much of the other funds are there. And that will conclude.
All right, Council, any questions?
Presentation.
Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you. Thank you, AJ. I appreciate that overview. I have quite a few questions. The first one is on the Moody's bond rating. I'm not sure I was following what you were saying. So we are AAA now, or it said it a capital A, lowercase a, and a 3. Is that a AAA? Is that what that means?
The AAA, that is where we are now.
Okay. All right. And is that the highest you can get, or what's the highest?
By Moody, that is the highest you can be, AAA.
Okay,
there's
great.
double A, there's A, then of course there's double B, there's B, and junk bonds.
We don't want that. Okay. On the debt capacity, you said that with Councilmatic and with the vote, if we had a citizen vote, we're about 175,000 almost. 175 million, or almost 176 million. So that's what our capacity. That's what right now, based on our financial position, that's what you believe we could afford to take on in terms of debt, based on how strong we are financially. Is that correct?
Correct. That is the state. I think one beautiful thing about Washington State compared to a lot of other states, the state actually put a threshold on individual entity to say, well, your debt can only be this percentage of your asset of your city. So based on that, statute, yes, that is the maximum that we can have.
Thank you.
Where we below that.
Okay. Couple more questions. On the new markets tax credits versus the bonds, if we don't get the new markets tax credits, bonding it, I just want to, for the record, say that from the beginning, I've been very concerned about and I mentioned this at numerous meetings previously, very concerned about possibly not getting the new markets tax credits and having to bond for that. It's just not the avenue probably all of us would prefer to take, but since I've said it before, I'm just going to say it again. So hopefully we will get those. My last question is on the hotel pad. I've heard a couple of different things, and I thought the last thing I'd heard was that we were not going to sell that pad because we were going to try and sell some of the target site for the hotel. So is this a reversal on that, or where are we on that?
It's evolving.
Okay.
We're in negotiations with a party, but we've got, as we're going to set forth at the regular meeting about where we're at with TC3, we've had some initial discussions with a possible hotelier for a piece of that, but we also have two individuals or entities that are interested in TC3. What we don't want to do is cut a special deal out for the hotel, which would then jeopardize the two interested parties.
Okay.
So, which I think they are interested in a hotel as well. So I think it's evolving as TC3 kind of plays out.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate that, and that helps me understand it. And I did have one other quick question regarding that pad. And it goes back to, the estimate that we thought years ago that we could get about $1 million for that. But considering the increase that we were seeing in the price, the value of that land, are we potentially significantly higher, I hope?
Yeah, one of the interesting thing is when we were looking at that pad, we were always looking at the back side, the loading dock, and Councilmember Honda and several council members were concerned about that pad.
Right.
I think by necessity, we have been thinking about the hotel maybe coming alongside the Performing Arts and Conference Center to the just immediately to the east.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what that does for the TC3 purchase allows us a little bit more latitude. We are thinking about moving the PACC over about, what was the, Will? 18 feet. We're thinking about moving the PACC. It's not we're moving it over to facilitate a few things. Well, the reason I bring this up is the hotel pad could go on to
The target site.
The target site.
Okay.
And so certain hoteliers would need at least maybe 2.5 acres.
Okay.
So it's going to cut into that. The reason I bring it to go into that level of detail is that ultimately for that site that is the PACC site, I think you're going to see maybe one to a little bit more. It's complicated, but I do think actually because of the values, I think we were very, very sanguine, very very upbeat about the dollar figures that were being thrown out for 2.5.
Okay.
But so a lot of it's negotiation though. But I think the two parties that we've been engaging with are very interested in that hotel piece and they want to be involved in that.
Great, thank you very much.
Sorry if that was TMI. But
No, it's perfect.
all right, thank you. All right.
I have a question.
Yeah, Lydia, Councilmember Sapadasa.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the description. I'm curious about the CDBG loan, which is the Section 108. Am I correct? So can you explain to us how that works and how it's going to impact any of the other CDBG or Section 108 that could be used for something else?
The way that will work is we will also get the beauty of Section 108, where we get that 3 million or 3.1 million, we will be able to use a portion of our annual allocation to service that payment. A big part of our annual allocation is spent on admin, so which means we can divert most of that to service that debt. It depends on what the annual allocation is. So I think the percentage that we use to service this debt can be very low, again, depending on what the annual allocation is for the next 10, 20 years. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, Council, any further questions? We do have one public comment that I've seen a sheet for. Thank you, Aday. Margaret Nelson. And if anybody else would like to comment, think about it. And as soon as Ms. Nelson is completed or done speaking, then I'll ask.
Thank you very much. Council, I am curious about the sight lines from the PACC to Mount Rainier. Even the developer showed a beautiful picture showing Mount Rainier. But I do not know if that sight line will be preserved, if you've got intentions of preserving it, if you're working with the community development director or with the planning commission to do this. And I would like more information about that. I would propose it would be a lovely idea to be able to stand there, especially if this is supposed to be a lantern in the city.
Right.
You'd have to have a place in the city to stand and look up to it. And, it'd be nice to have it both ways, looking away from the PACC and looking up towards the PACC. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Margaret, and we received your email, and actually with the we've received where I've been talking with several council members, and I have a commitment to the council to bring this issue about line of sight or sight view vistas specifically and most especially from the PACC and the park to the mountain. And the commitment that we made is we are going to have a special study session, likely the second meeting in May, and talk about this. And so we're going to do it as quickly as we can. We've got our Michael Morales, our new community development director, but on the very first day he started, we were talking about this issue. And we need to protect those views, absolutely. The worst thing in the world would be, or close to it, would be to build this beautiful facility and have this beautiful park and to have something pop up right in the middle of that view. So we're not going to let that happen. Okay. Okay, council, I know we've got executive session, but does anybody else have anything for the good of the order before we retire to executive session? All right, with that, we will be in recess for executive session pursuant to 4230-1101B for property acquisition. All right, thank you.